it can be a challenge knowing what curriculum to pick to teach your child to read. So today I want to compare two with you. I want to compare the art of reading, the stages 1 and 2, with Logic of English Foundations levels A and B, and walk you through them a little bit. I want to share a few of the similarities and then a whole lot of the differences, and hopefully help you know if one of these would be a good fit for your family. Hey guys, welcome and thanks for joining me today. If you are new to my channel, I am a young homeschooling mom of 3 kids. I have a first grader, a kindergartner, and a toddler. I am also a second generation homeschooler, and so this channel is all things homeschool. I just love chatting homeschool stuff with you guys, so welcome along. So, like I said, today we are chatting phonics curriculum, and one of the things that started this video is that The Art of Reading just released their second stage of their curriculum. And so while I had done a video in the past flipping through the first stage, now that there are 2 stages out, I want to compare with you stages 1 and 2 of The Art of Reading in contrast to levels A and B of Logic of English Foundations. First, let me share with you a little bit of my experience with each one. So I have used Logic of English Foundations to teach my older daughter to read. We used levels A, B, and C. We did not use level D, but that's a conversation for another time. And it worked beautifully. I love it, and I still love it. So I'm not going to say anything bad about either of these curriculums today, probably. Um, and it worked beautifully. She is a fluent reader. It went well. With my second daughter, we used levels A, and then we reached almost the end of level B, and we kind of hit a roadblock. I didn't feel like we were progressing, so I decided, well, let's start over in level B. Maybe we just got too hard and we need to slow down. And I just didn't really feel like even starting over it was gaining her that much. So since I had The Art of Reading on hand because the creator had sent me a copy to share with you guys, I thought, well, let's try that out. Let's just start at the very beginning with that so we don't miss anything. And let's see if moving in that style progress is easier for her. So that is what we have done. We have used stage 1 in its entirety. We just wrapped that up with her. And while most of this was review for her, there were a few new concepts, but the large majority is review for her. And so as we're moving into stage 2 now, we are going to really see how it works for her using this different curriculum because we're going to be starting to jump into some new territory, but it has been really good to stop and try this other curriculum. With that said, I have not taught a child to read fully using The Art of Reading, but as I have been using this curriculum with my younger daughter, I have been taking a ton of notes on the similarities and differences between these curriculums. And that is what this video is about, is not telling you which curriculum I like better. It's not telling you which curriculum you should choose, if you should choose either. It's really just trying to dissect the similarities and differences so that you guys know if either of these would be a good fit for your family and you can decide if you like either of these. So that's all this video is. I don't want to give you an opinion on which one is better, just on what they are so that you can make an educated decision. So there are a lot of differences. So we're going to start with the similarities because I think that's going to be easier. And then I'm going to share a few differences and then turn the camera around and show you more. So to start with, both are really good, solid phonics programs. I think you could do really well with either one, just depending on what you need and what you're looking for as a homeschool mom. Both rely really heavily on phonics. Neither one leans hard on sight words. In fact, both lean really heavily on phonics. I would say slightly more. The Art of Reading uses a few more sight words than Logic of English does. Words like the, to, do are words that Logic of English would say you could sound out, whereas Art of Reading would say teach them as a sight word. So I would say in all of level 1 of the Art of Reading, we have come across maybe 4 or 5 sight words, which is really very few compared to most curriculums. Whereas in Foundations, I think the only one I can think of that they've really taught as a sight word would be the word of, off the top of my mind. I could be wrong, there might be more, but there are a few less in Logic of English, if that matters to you. Both also have some similar activities. So one of them would be practicing identifying sounds within a word. So having your child learn how to identify what's the beginning sound of a word, what's the ending sound of a word, what's a middle sound of a word. And that's a super helpful activity for kids to be able to hear words and actually identify them within a word, not just when reading, but auditorily. Another thing both do is they both address encoding, not just decoding. So that is, they don't just teach how to look at a word and read the word, but how to hear a word and assemble the right letters to write the word down. So spelling. Both of them address this a little differently, though, and I will talk about that a little bit more when I turn the camera on and show you some more of the differences. But those would be what I would say would be the similarities. Heavy on phonics, light on sight words, and then a few similar activities. But for some of the differences, let me start with some of the basic, just upfront things about like what comes with each curriculum, what the prices are, that kind of thing. And then I'll turn the camera around and show you actually inside the curriculum. Okay, so start with The Art of Reading is going to be 3 stages. Currently, stage 1 and stage 2 are out. Stage 3 is in development right now. For Logic of English Foundations, we have levels A, and B, which is what we're talking about today, but there is also levels C and D. So you have 4 stages for Logic of English, 3 for Art of Reading. Art of Reading is currently only available as a PDF. I do believe she has plans to make that hard copies available in the future, but currently they are just available as PDF. Logic of English is available as a hard copy like I have, or to gain as a PDF. Price-wise, though, the Art of Reading has dropped their price recently from $110 to $65 per stage. So that's a significant drop in cost. So if you see my previous video on level 1 and we're kind of on the fence because of the cost, that has dropped significantly now. So they are $65 each stage. That's the total cost. Logic of English is a little more difficult to price out. If you wanted to buy just the teacher's manual, the student manual, and the readers, so the very basic of basics, you could get that for about $80, and it doesn't matter if it's PDF or hardbound, it's the same price. However, if you want to get their complete package with all of the flashcards and whiteboards and all of the things they recommend you having, just to get the first level with all of the add-ons, which you would use all the add-ons for all 4 levels, to just be clear, that's close to $250. And then after that, to buy everything they want per level would be between $80 and $100, depending on the level. So you're looking at $65 a level for this, and then you're looking at bare bones, about $80 a level, max $250 for the first level, and then $100 for the levels following. Now, to be fair, you can, because this is a hard copy curriculum that's been around for a while, you can find these used and get it a little cheaper like I did. But if you're going new, that's kind of the price comparison. Okay, let's chat what these levels come with real quick before I turn the camera around. Art of Reading. This is what it has. This is the book you need. The teacher's notes, the student workbook, it's all in one. What they do recommend you have as well is some flashcards. I actually use like letter tiles, but some flashcards to play some games, to assemble the words for your daughter, or your child, not just your daughter. And then they have a request for a few extra things like scissors, glue, a fly swatter, just things you have around the house. But you really need this book and flashcards. And when I say flashcards, you need a set that has lowercase and uppercase flashcards separately. So 2 sets of flashcards, I guess, and then that is all you need for this set. Now, if you want to use Logic of English Foundations with all the pieces recommended, I'm going to pull up my book and tell you what that is. Now, the reason I have to pull up my computer and show you what that is, or read out to you what that is because I did not buy all of the pieces that came with this. I just didn't. I had to make some of my own pieces because I was on a budget and couldn't afford to spend $250. I bought a lot of things used. I made my own, and some pieces I didn't actually end up using. I decided they were unnecessary. Okay, so for Foundations A, the package would include the teacher's manual and a student workbook, obviously, and a set of Foundations A readers. It would also include a book called Doodling Dragons, which is like rhymes and like a ditty that has the different phonetic sounds in it. And then it would come with the following. It would come with a basic phonogram flashcard set, spelling rule flashcards, phonogram and spelling rule quick reference guide, a spelling analysis quick reference guide, a student whiteboard, phonogram game tiles, phonogram game cards with a book face font, so they're game cards, or manuscripts, depending on which one you want, and handwriting tactile cards for cursive or manuscript. So I did not mention that, and I guess I should. Art of Reading is all in print. Logic of English, you have the choice to teach your child cursive or print because handwriting is included in this one. And so depending on what you choose, certain of the letters and certain of the workbooks will be different. Certain of the flashcards, certain of the like game cards and stuff would be a little different. But that's what this comes with. So right off the bat, you can tell that this has a lot more working components than this one. So if you are like, I want simple, I want to pick up a book and have everything right there, this is going to be way more your boat than if you're like, I want all the details, I want to be really hands-on. This is an Orton Gilliam approach. This is not. And so a lot depends on what you're looking for. So this is going to have a lot more hands-on pieces, a lot more moving parts, and for a purpose, but it is there. Okay. So now let's go ahead and turn the camera around and show you some of the other differences. All right, so to begin with, I want to show you inside Logic of English. I'm going to show you inside a few things in A, walk you through a lesson in here, and then I'm going to pull in level B so that you can see how a lesson would look like in there. And then I'm going to move over to the Art of Reading, showing you some lessons inside of that and comparing and contrasting how they are similar or different. Mainly different. But to start with, each level in Logic of English has 40 lessons. These lessons are not meant to necessarily be completed in one day. I think in level A, if your reader is ready, most of the lessons can be completed in one day. Of course, when I did it, I did skip a few things, which I will mention as we go. But just depends on you and your child and how fast you're moving through it. You absolutely do not have to go through it in one day. And they do not, I think, even expect you to in the older levels. You can take 2 to 3 days for a lesson, but that is up to you. You get to kind of decide how you want to break this out. But what I want to show you in specific in the beginning of this is kind of how they do blending. I absolutely loved how this introduced my daughter to blending because when it actually got to reading her first CVC words, blending was just so easy. Because how they do this is in the beginning of the book when they're first introducing you to your letter sounds. Now, ideally, your child will be familiar with her letter sounds, but when we're starting from the beginning, before she starts reading words on paper, they have you practice blending with them. So you would say, for instance, sh, out, and your child would have to blend it together and go shout. And you do that with a list of words, and almost every single day, if not every single day, they have some sort of activity. Again, here, p-n, pen, p-a-p-er, paper. Some sort of activity where you are giving them a word broken down and they blend it so that when they finally get to reading words on the page, they've already mastered the idea of blending sounds together. So it's super easy because then when they go p-a-p-er, they've already conquered the thought of blending those into paper. Both of my children were very different in teaching them how to blend, and both it was so smooth. I have loved this. And then down the road, instead of you giving them the broken down word, you saying p-n and them going pen, instead you will give them the word pen and they will have to break it down p-n. And so I have just loved the way it teaches blending. Now, let me show you inside a lesson and just give you kind of a view of what it looks like. So in a lesson, you are going to have kind of an introductory material for you as teacher, what skills are being worked on, the materials you might need here. And then our first activity is phonemic awareness. So listening for sounds at the end of the words. And in these blue highlighted areas, this is referencing a student page. Now, I do not have the workbook because I got the PDF, but I did print out the pages for you so that you could kind of see what they look like. So in this, you are giving them a page with some pictures on it, and you are going to have them tell you what these are. So you clarify what these words are. And then you are going to give them a sound and say which one of these ends in the sound k. And your child will circle desk, right? Which of these is going to end in t? And they'll circle boat. So you're just giving them that all the way through. Now, as you can see already, this book is scripted and completely scripted. You can read these pretty much verbatim. What you're going to be reading or talking to your child, like if I read this to you, it would say, now find the word that ends in the sound n. Okay, let's segment that word. So they would find the word crown. Let's segment the word crown and listen for the n sound. And your child would segment and go k, r, ow, n. That would be them. So in the normal font, that's what you are actually saying to your child. In this bold and italics font, that is the response you are expecting from your child. And then anything that's in this kind of slightly bigger and darker text, that is instructions for you. So it's super clear. And if you're not comfortable with teaching reading, this is a big strength in this, in that you don't have to know what to say. You don't have to know how to present it. You can literally just read the teacher's manual. Now, I don't generally. I read it and then say it in my own words, but it really, you just know exactly what you're supposed to do. There is no question. So that is the first student page that they would reference. So you have that activity. Then you go here into a new one where you have the phonogram J. And so you would pull up your flashcard and you would say, this says J. And then you would ask them, what does it say? And they said, J. Can you sing the sound J? No. So they talk through it. They, you give them a word, and if it starts with J, they have to do a jumping jack and shout J as loud as they can. And then you would move into what they have here for doodling dragons. Now, I never used this piece. I didn't buy the books, and I didn't find it all that helpful when I did have a book on hand. I think I got one with one of the sets once, and I just never used it. But if you had this piece of the curriculum, you would go to the page that has J, and it has a little ditty on it that has the J sound all throughout. And you would read it to them, and then you would have the students listen for the J sound while you're reading it and ask them to jog in place every time they hear you say J. Okay? Then you move into handwriting. This Logic of English is different from Art of Reading in that Logic of English you could really consider an all-in-one language arts. It has reading, it has handwriting, and it has spelling. So for the very early elementary grades, kindergarten, first grade, even maybe second grade, this could be its own complete curriculum, whereas Art of Reading is really just phonics. So I never used the handwriting piece because I wanted to teach my daughter to read far before she was ready to be really fluent in handwriting, and I didn't want to push her in handwriting before she was ready. So we skipped this, but if you were going to do it, you would teach them how to write the lowercase j. They teach you different strokes, like a handful of base strokes in the beginning. Um, and then with those strokes, you give them the instructions. Swing up to the midline, drop down halfway. So these are all things that you and your child would have practiced in the very beginning of this book. And as you can see, the teacher's manual has instructions for both cursive and manuscript, because depending on which one you choose when you order, you can choose the student workbook to be cursive or manuscript. And then you would give them different instructions depending on what you want to do. Okay, you have here, this is part of the handwriting, write on paper, and that would be this student page. And this is kind of nice if you are doing the handwriting. They have it in all the different sizes, so your child can pitch which size is actually most comfortable for them to write in, because some children will need these really big lines, but some children actually do better with slightly smaller. So you pick the size, and they would practice writing J with your instructions. Okay, next we have our systematic phonics, and this is moving phonograms. So say an action and show a basic phonogram flashcard. So just the flashcard of J or whatever. Ask the student to do the action as he says each sound. Clap, jump, tap your head, tap your nose. So you're giving them something physical to do while they're saying what's on the flashcard. So you give them a flashcard, give them an action, and they have to say the sound and do it at the same time. So again, involving their body in it. So if you have a wiggly child, this one actually can be helpful. Some of these games, there's a lot of things that get up and do this or shout this or say this. So they did think through that in those terms. And then provide your student with a stack of book-face game cards. If you did not buy the game cards, I have just used the flashcards for a lot of these activities. And then one of the manuscripts. So if you're using cursive, you would hand them cursive. If you're using manuscript, you'd hand them manuscript. And you're having to match the letters up so that they recognize an A in cursive as well as an A in the way it's typed in a book, or an A in normal handwriting versus the way it's typed in the book, because it often looks different. All right, so the next we have our spelling. And like I said, this is really a actual spelling activity. This isn't just a little bit of, assemble the words and sound them out and try to put them together. They actually have it listed out for you. They have a whiteboard that comes with it that is really nice for this. I bought a whiteboard at the dollar store instead of buying theirs, but theirs has like a big whiteboard on one side and then like small lines on the other. So depending on what your child needs. But here is your spelling list. The ones in white are the ones they want you to do. The ones in blue are optional. And then they give you the word. They give you a sentence in the word. So cat, the cat is purring loudly. And then they give you a say to spell. So this is how you would actually say it so that they can hear the phonic sounds in it. Any markings they need to know, and any spelling hints that you should be giving them. So if there's a rule that you've learned that applies to this word, you could give them that hint. And then they walk you through how to teach your child to spell these words, how to walk them through the phonics of each word here. Now, they don't walk you through every word in future lessons, but they walk you through ones that are challenging or ones that have a new concept in them. And then lastly, we have comprehension and fluency in this day, and that would be match words to pictures. So that would be this page here, where they would read this word and match it to the picture. And then lastly, they give you an acted out word. So you would say a word, or you would segment a word. So you would say sad, and then your child would have to say the word sad and act it out for you. So that's kind of just a basic lesson in level 1. You see all of these little green boxes as we go through. All of these green boxes are teacher's tips, helping you, if your child has a hard time sounding out the word, here's some hints you can give, or at this stage, it's more important to do this than to worry about this. So these are just little things for you. The orange boxes are often like, this is multisensory fun, so ways to take this out of writing if you have a child who struggles with writing. This would be a challenge if you have a child who's like really good at it. Let's see if there was any other boxes. Since you're learning J, they have this little J day, eat jam or jello or jerky, jump rope, tell jokes. So some things you can incorporate to make it fun. Here's a song that you could sing to incorporate the new sound they're laying. So these little boxes are really just for you to kind of help engage your child. All right, so let me go to the next book and show you a lesson in there, and because there will be a few more things I want to point out in level 2 that are more applicable as your child goes further on. The first thing to note is that the book, level A, ends at lesson 40, and then level B just picks up here at lesson 41. There's no in-between material. There's no review material. It just continues going with the same format, a little bit bigger lessons as you get further in because you are dealing with a slightly older child, but it is just the same format. So let me go over to, let's say, lesson 52, just to pick one to work through with you guys. Okay, so you're going to notice that the setup is really the same. You have this introductory material. You have these activities introducing your phonograms. Whistling Whales is the equivalent of the Doodling Dragons that was in the first book. So this is another book that just has like those rhymes that have alliteration in them. You have your handwriting chunk. You're going to have different games. So, timed phonogram reading, letter matching game. You're working on syllables and identifying syllables. So, once again, with this writing on paper, you have another one of these. Level B starts introducing capital letters. In level A, they only use lowercase. So, in level B, you're going to start doing lowercase and uppercase letters. And then here with this syllables game, you have this paper that would show, they would have to identify the word and then circle how many syllables is in the word. You have spelling. And then here in level B, you start introducing a little bit of grammar with question marks, how to read a question. So you ask them, how would you read it? The voice goes a little higher at the end, and then read it like it's a statement. Ask them, does that sound right? So you're kind of just addressing a little bit. It's very light in the grammar in these first books. Comprehension and fluency. So you have these couple of pages that would come out here, which they would read, a question and then have to read the answer and then circle it based on the answer. So also that they understand, not just that they can read. And then they have you pull in a book. Now with this series, they have 2 book sets. One I bought and one I didn't. And so I'm just going to show you the one I have, which is not actually the one that would be applicable to this level, but I'm just going to pull the other set in. This is for the series I didn't buy. But this is what their readers look like. So they're pretty simple. And when they want you to do them, they tell you when to pull them in. They have you ask questions after each page or so, understanding comprehension, pointing out punctuation, that kind of thing, for you to ask your child. Okay, so as you can see, this has more grammar, it has the spelling, it has the handwriting. Logic of English also has every 5 lessons, and this is for A, B, C, and D. All of the levels do this. There is an assessment that tells you what your goals are for the assessment. So these are the things they want you to do, and this is the number here will tell you if it needs to be just they need to be familiar with it, or if they actually need to be mastered, or if they have to have mastered the concept. And then you have some student pages, which I did not print out, that go with this. You give them an activity, they do it, and then you get to gauge whether or not they are ready to go on. If they are not ready to go on, they have a list of practice ideas that you should work on and then do the assessment again. And then once they complete enough of the assessment correctly, then you would move on to the next page. So they have that. Another thing that Logic of English B does, and I want to find one here, see if I can find an example of this to show you. Okay, so here we go. When they introduce a new phonogram or a new letter, whichever one, they call them all phonograms, but a digraph, a letter, whatever you want to say. So in this case, OU. They do not introduce just the main sound of OU or the main 2 sounds. They introduce every sound that OU commonly says. So in this case, it'd be ow, o, oo, Now, that is a lot of sounds for a child to memorize. And granted, that is not, most of them have like 2 or 3 sounds versus 4 or 5. But they have your child memorize it in that order, in order of how common it is to be used. So normally it says ow, next to it say o. And they do teach the children some rules as to when to know which one to use as they go. But the idea being that they want your child not to be surprised that OW says another sound when you come to it down the road. They want them to be familiar with the idea of that, oh, yes, this has multiple sounds. The most common one that we use is ow. So we're going to use that one most. And then there are rules that would address when we would use the other sounds. Or if the first sound doesn't sound right? If you're reading a word with OW and ow doesn't fit, then you try the next common sound. Let's try O next. If ow and O don't work, let's try oo, until your child is familiar with the word. So that is one way that they do teach phonograms that's a little bit different. They also have a lot of very specific spelling rules that go with your spelling. So in here, you see these spelling hints. These are the rules that would go with your spelling, and they really teach your children a lot of rules. For instance, we often double F, L, and S after a single word at the end of a base word. So your child would have been familiar with this. They should be memorizing these over the course of it. And so when they come to these words, if you needed to give them a hint, you can start the rule for them and they should be able to complete it for you. So this focuses very heavily on phonics and spelling rules that you would memorize. With that, let me shut this and move over to the art of reading, let you see inside that and show you some of the differences. I am editing and I just realized that I wanted to be very clear and upfront with you guys that I did receive both copies of the art of reading for free from the creator. as a way of helping get word out about her products since she is very new. So she sent me a copy to be able to show on this channel and share with you guys. But that does not affect anything I say. I really have tried to keep this an honest and open review, but I also want to be very transparent with you guys that I did not pay for this actual material. I did pay for the Logic of English, but not for the Art of Reading. So I just want to put that out there, so I'm being completely transparent with you guys. Okay, we are going to start with level 1, and I might have to move this around to keep the main page that we're talking about in screen. But to start with, level 1 has 36 lessons. Level 2, I believe, has only 26. But these lessons, again, similar to Logic of English, are not meant to be completed in one day. However, not like Logic of English, they are marked very clearly for you as which days are to be done on what. So each lesson will have equivalent of generally 2 to 4 days, depending on what they're introducing. But you see it's marked here as day 1, day 3, day 3. So it is very clear what you are to do. You're not left having to decide yourself where you're going to break it. It's done that for you. Up at first, they teach all of the vowels. Logic of English does not. They do a mix of vowels and consonants and slowly introduce the vowels. Art of Reading does all the vowels and then starts introducing the consonants so that you can blend with all the vowels. The way they teach blending is different from Logic of English, and I have not used this one, so I cannot voice an opinion on it, but I know that the creator thought a lot when she did this. And she really wanted to make it intuitive for the English language. So instead of blending with a consonant first and then a vowel, like you see a lot of reading programs do, like so in this case, it would be ma, and then have them add the n, man. She did it the opposite. She starts with a vowel, which is easier for children, and goes n, and then add the m, man. So she has a whole page on how to teach blending, how to work through it in here for you, and that is her method, which is a little different than the other one. But let me just kind of jump into the middle and pick a day or a lesson to go through here. Okay, so right off the bat, you can see that the Art of Reading is really beautiful inside. I think that's one thing she did amazing, is she made it really attractive, both for a child and for the teacher. So this is also written much less, because this isn't a teacher's manual, right? There are instructions for the teacher, but it is not scripted like the other one. So that is a huge difference. It does have instructions like ask the child to point to the pictures and name them. This is what we're teaching the child. Read this to the child, right? So you read that. Letter S makes this sound. Can you say this? So there's a few things that you would say, but most of the time as you're working through it, so the first day you would do, introduce the concept, do these few little activities, and then you would move into this. They're both labeled for you as day 18. So we have day 18 and day 18. So that's really easy to follow. And then you have your instructions, which is read the sound blends. And then we have, a little instruction that you would read to your child, and that's it. And then you go to 2. So you follow the numbered steps. So then you go to 2, and there's a little instruction for your child. And then 3, a little, and this is a game that you would play with your child. And then 4, you would read the story on page 33. And again, anytime they want you to read a story, they show you really clearly. And this is page 33 story. So another difference, the readers. The readers in Art of Reading have no pictures for 2 reasons. One, they do not want your child to depend on the pictures. They don't want them to cheat by using the pictures. They want them to be fully reading and comprehending just based on reading. And 2, it's less distracting for your child not to have pictures. Now, I'm in 2 minds on this. I do like having actual books for my child to read, but I do get that this is definitely much less distracting for my child to read in a lesson. So I like this within our lesson, but then I like having little readers on the side for my kid to be able to read. When they do these readers, she incorporates little bits of grammar, and she starts that early on in level A and continues it into level B. But you see often, I don't know if you can see here, this question mark is in red, so anything you're going to address grammar-wise with the child is highlighted in red for you. And we're just discussing that a name would start with a lowercase or capital letter, right? You're asking your child that. And then in 4, it talks about how a period would tell you that the sentence is finished, but there's other punctuation marks. What is this? So it kind of walks through a little bit of that. So this is not as fully scripted, but it definitely doesn't leave you hanging. So if you're somebody who doesn't like that full scripting, but you want enough that you know kind of where you're going, then this is more for you. But if you're somebody who loves that fully scripted feel, Logic of English might be more in your camp. Okay, another thing that Art of Reading does, which I really like. Well, let me finish running you through this lesson. I don't think I even walked you through this entire one. So you would do this introductory phrase. You would read these words and have your child identify where the sound is in each of these words as you're reading it to them. Is it in the beginning, the end, or the middle? And then you would have them blend with each of the vowels. And then you would have them read a sentence, and you would have them, help them with the blendings, doing this first and then adding the T. And you've got the pictures for the words they don't know, right? And then you would have them read the double letter at the end and talk about how they make the same sound when you have that double letter. And then here you have a little game where you use your letter cards or your letter tiles, and you would lay out each of the uppercase letters that they already know, and each of the lowercase letters, and you would mix them up. And then you have your child flip over a card, have them name the letter sound, or the letter, its sound, and whether it's uppercase or lowercase, and then flip another card. And if they match, they get to keep both cards. So it's kind of like a game of concentration, but where your child has to say the sounds and identify the letters. So that would be day 1. These are very short and sweet, these lessons, and I appreciate that as well. This is the next day. You would color in the sound that's at the beginning of, whatever these pictures are. You would use your alphabet cards to build some letter blends. So you would give them at, and they would have to put it together with an A and a T. And then you do that with these, and then you actually build some short words. So very early on, they're having your child assemble words, which I think is super helpful in learning. All right, then here we have some cutting and pasting. So you cut out the pictures at the bottom of the page and paste them on top of each word that they match, and then find the letter B or D. There is a ton of these for the B and D and Q and P reversals, which is super helpful. A lot of these activities where your child is pulling them out and identifying them, and I love that. And then this story, which you would have read twice by now. So here you see it says read story on page 33. So this day you would have read this story. And then again, when you do this page on day 19, you would come back and read this again. So often you're reading your stories twice. And that would be one complete lesson. Okay, now let me move on to a few other things that the Art of Reading does that Logic English does not. So one thing in their readers is their readers and just their pages in general. The Art of Reading underlines the new digraphs that you've been learning or the new blends. And I think this is super helpful to new readers because my children have a hard time. Like when I give them a flashcard, they can say the sound, but then in a word, they start sounding tuh instead of saying the, right? And so having it underlined for them, just initially, she fades off as she keeps going and stops underlining them and underlines the new ones that you're learning, right? Here we're no longer underlining the, we're now underlining the all or the CK sounds. But it really helps your child recognize them when they're reading. So I really, really like that. They also do not teach every sound that each letter or phonogram pair makes, right? In this one, here she teaches the 2 most common sounds, oo, but there is a third sound that Logic of English would teach with it. Instead of teaching as an exception or as less common, they would teach them all, whereas she just teaches the main ones and then comes back later and often teaches further sounds in a following lesson. But that is a difference as well. So if you like just teaching 1 or maybe 2 sounds at once, if that seems less complicated to you, then you would like this. Or if you are the person who wants your child to know all the sounds so that there's no question down the road or no confusion when they have to learn another sound, then that's more Logic of English's approach. Okay, so what I want to do is shut this and I'm going to open level 2 to talk about the rest, just so you can kind of get a feel for inside both of them. They're very, very similar. One thing that Art of Reading does differently than Logic of English, well, one more thing, is when you swap into level 2, there is a full 20 days of just review. So these pages here are adding no new information. You have 20 days, which is 4 weeks if you're doing it 5 days a week, right, of just practicing with what your child has already learned. I really like this. I like if this is you're going to take a break between levels, then you're coming back to just what you've learned, not adding new. But I also like your child has a lot of stuff they're learning. This is overwhelming to a lot of children. And so to take 20 days in between and just pause is wonderful for some children. And so I kind of like that. You just get to work with what you know before you then start adding new material in. And you also notice that this program, Art of Reading, has no handwriting. Not just no handwriting built in, but there is no writing at all required in any of these pages. So if you have a child who does not have fine motor skills, that is really, really nice. She has you use all letter tiles or flashcards for all your spelling activities. There's no handwriting required. Now, she does have a handwriting program for kindergarten level if your child is ready for that, but you would do them alongside. It's not actually part of this lesson, and it's not referenced in here anywhere. I would say that the Art of Reading has a little bit more grammar. No, actually it does. It has quite a bit more grammar mixed in. Let me see if I can find an example of where some grammar would be in here. So here we have circling adjectives. So this is level 2. We have not done this, but in level 1, we have been working on nouns and verbs, and we've just introduced adjectives. So she does it in context of reading, but she does talk about it. And your child isn't supposed to understand and fully master adjectives, but she does discuss them frequently. They come back in. So here we're doing nouns, coloring which ones are nouns. So she does introduce a lot more grammar into this program than Logic of English does. Also, I mentioned that both programs use spelling activities. So, where in Logic of English, it's more of an actual spelling where you say the word, you give them a sentence, and then you give them like spelling rules to help them spell the words. This is more of just another activity on the page that's another way of reinforcing the phonics. So, I would say where Logic of English is actually teaching your children to know how to spell, Art of Reading is more using these spelling activities as a reinforcement of learning to read. So, in here, you would give them the word, you would give them, a little bit of understanding of, so this is with AY versus AI. You would help them know that AI is used in the beginning or middle of words while AI is used at the end. Now, in Logic of English, they would already have learned a rule that would help them know that you would help them. There's a rule that talks about English words do not end in I, U, V, or J. So you would pull that out and talk about why AI isn't used at the end because English words don't end in I. Now, this doesn't do that. This is much simpler, much more basic in their phonics instruction. And then you would give them letter cards or letter tiles and have them build these words. I would also say that this program has more actual reading per day. So, for instance, this would be a single day where you're reading a lot of words, and then you would go to the story. And because every single day has a story, I think there's actually more actual reading practice in Art of Reading per day than there is in Logic of English. Logic of English, as you progress, definitely has more as well, but I think even more in this program. Now, that is a difference between level 1 and level 2 of the Art of Reading is with level 1, the stories were mixed in. You would have, a couple days of activities and then your stories, whereas in level 2, she's got all of the activities up front and then in the back, all of the stories for you to go to. So she references very clearly what page you need to go to get to the story. And the stories are continuations. So this story goes for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. So 6 days of story in here. And so they become longer stories that your child comes back to and continues reading. Okay, so I think those are a lot of the main differences within this, other than the obvious, just the way it looks and appears and the way it's laid out. So let me just flip through a few more of these pages for you, just so you can kind of get a feel of level 2. And so when you're done with level 2 of Art of Reading, this is about the reading level that they would be at. Okay, guys. So, in summary, if you are looking for something that is fun and beautiful and simpler to teach, then the art of reading is going to be much more for you. This is beautiful. It just appeals to the child in all of us and the teacher. I think this is a much easier and simpler phonics program to teach. Whereas Logic at English really goes into depth in those phonics and spelling rules. It really just drills those in and helps you understand why each word is read the way it is, eliminating almost all sight words. And it gives you that scripted teacher's guide that it tells you exactly what it wants you to say and exactly what it wants the student to respond, so that you know exactly where you're going. So if that is what you're looking for, then this would be more for you. Some things to note would be that with the art of reading, because this was made in Australia, two things to note. This was designed to be printed on a slightly different size paper. What was this? I can try to pop out the size it is. So if you buy this as a PDF and print it yourself, there would just be some larger white margins around the edge as you print it. This was printed on the proper paper. Or if you're one of those people who buy a PDF and then send it out to be printed, it's good to know so you can have it printed on the correct size paper. Also, there are just a few words in here that are pronounced differently. So one example somebody mentioned was orange when they're teaching the ah sound. I say orange, not orange. And so just because it was written in Australia, there's just a few words that I would sound out differently. So you may, as you come across those, need to just adjust slightly. There's not a whole lot, but it's worth mentioning. The other thing to note is with Logic at English, they have an amazing Facebook group. It's extremely active and you can ask just about any question on there and get an answer. Probably too many answers and some you won't like, but you will get answers. So if you're looking for something with an amazing support system, of people on Facebook that you can really ask any questions as you get stuck to, that is something that they do have available just because there's a lot of people who use this and love this. And if you want a more detailed look inside the art of reading level 1, you should click on this video here because I've done a complete flip through on it. Or if you're interested in Logic for English and you want to see what pieces I think are actually necessary to use this program, I've done a video on that, sharing which pieces I used and which pieces I didn't find essential.